Hi, this is Dario, DNM Fine Finishes. I know it's been a while since I've done a video, but I started working on this table for a friend and I figured I'll make a video out of it. This table was with lacquer, so I sanded it nice and even with 80 grit. You have to be careful not to break through the veneer. 80 grit because I wanted to knock down as many of the big scratches that it had on it, and I accomplished that. You got to be careful though. This is veneer. Veneer is very thin. If you're not careful, you'll break through the veneer. This is going to be painted, so it doesn't really matter that much, but if you're going to stain it, you got to be real careful. What I like to use is wood filler, farm wood. This right here. I use this. I put it in a mixing cup. I mix it with a paint mixer. Put it in there, mix it, blah blah blah. And then what I like to do, sometimes you got those little dry pieces in this can because they don't seal very well. So I run it through a strainer. Fill it, open the strainer up like that. Put it in there and squeeze it out. Squeeze it all out. Once it's in there, I add a little bit of water just to make it easier to handle. Putty knife, you can use any size putty knife. The bigger the better. This is what I have at hand right now, so I can figure it out with this. What you want is you want to keep your putty knife at about 45 degrees, and you want to put, with both fingers, put pressure. If you're going from left to right, put a little bit more pressure on your right finger so that your left finger is just, your index finger is just helping to glide. The reason why you put a little bit more pressure on the white is so you don't scrape it all off. Let me show you. I already started on this table. See, it's a little bit on the runny side, more runnier than I like, but it'll work. Then you just start applying it. You're not applying it to look like something of painted surface already. What you want is just to get into that grain, put plenty of pressure on it, push it into that grain. Doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to get sanded. And this stuff, once it dries, it sands pretty easy. And really all we want to do is just put it inside the grain. If you're short and can't reach all the way across, that's not a problem. I like to do 2 coats. Just go round and round and round. The first coat will get in there pretty deep. The second coat, you're just going to smoothen it out. Just like that. See how I got a high ridge over here? I didn't have enough pressure on my left finger, on my index. So now I'm going to even it out a little bit. The work time on this is pretty good. You don't have to be in a hurry that's going to dry too fast on you like glaze or Bondo. This gives you a whole lot more time to work with. You just keep working it in. See all these little high spots there? It's little dry pieces that got through the strainer. I don't know how they got through there, but they did. Now this table has a leaf. If I open it up, I run the risk of getting that in here, and especially you don't want it in there, so I just keep it closed for this. So, and like I said, you can do this with any size putty knife, whatever you feel comfortable with. I've used even up to a 10-inch drywall finish knife. Goes a lot faster. But even a table this size, you can get it done. Even if it's your first time, you can get it done in no time. Just a little bit of practice. You don't want your putty knife like this because you get what is called snow plows. Same when you're doing caulk. When you wipe the caulk wrong, you get snow plows. You don't want to go like this. You want your knife also at about a 45-degree angle going sideways. See, I got my seam there. It's perfectly covered, so now I'm just going to separate just a little bit, so when it dries, it won't crack where the joint is. When I get the other side, I'll close it up again. It's just this simple. And it's just to cover the grain, fill the grain in a little bit. You could either do it like this, or you can spray or brush and roll an extra 4 or 5 coats of paint or primer. I ain't got time for all that. Once this is dry, I might give it another coat, I might not. If I don't, I'll sand it with 220, nice and even, get it nice and flat. 2 coats of primer, sand it, and 2 coats of finish, and you'll be done. The more you push it in, the better it's going to work. When I come here, I just come across. See how I got here on that edge? Get your fingernail up against there and just push it all out. On these tables, most of them, this outside and this inside here is solid oak, so that's why you have to be real careful when you're sanding. With the oak, you can sand it forever and nothing's going to happen to it. Sanding technique is also very important with these tables, or with anything that you're sanding. I try to overlap about 50%. Clean as you go. Just to close nice and tight. There we go. This took what, 10 minutes? And you're going to save yourself a bunch of primer, a bunch of time, a bunch of sanding. The excess in my bucket. Now the smoother you put on your first coat, the smoother your second coat's going to be. Sanding is very important. When you sand this, you want to do it nice and slow. What I found, the best way to sand with any grit on any surface, I like 1 inch per minute. If you move 1 inch per minute, you're not going to get those little pigtails, because you're going at the speed of the sander. Very little to no pressure on the sander, just the weight of your hand is the only thing that needs to be on it. If you move 1 inch per second, then when you finish your run, you bring it up and you overlap 50%, and you're consistently throughout the whole project 1 inch per second and overlapping at 50%, you'll have a dead flat table. And if you start your first coat, you start sanding from right to left, then your next one will be left to right, up and down. So you cross hatch this too, just like you do painting. You always do a cross hatch. This is the same thing. When you do a cross hatch, all these high areas will even out a little bit better. This is still wet. Can't do this one yet. We'll give it about 15 minutes to dry, and we'll come back and show you the second coat. Stay tuned.